against my enemies, yeah. You see, you wanted to save you, and then learn how to raise you. But I forget you're from the wilderness.
Eamon, I have a story to tell today now, and I don't want to blow up your spot.
No, please.
I see, because I don't think you actually realise I witnessed this. And, you know, I don't want to expose you on air.
Okay, so, but this isn't, it's not a poem, this is just a story.
It is a poem.
It is, of course, yeah, no, okay,
Yeah.
okay.
It's a poem, and it happened. I was walking through the forest, so without further ado, I suppose I should really read it for our listeners.
Oh, the excitement.
Yes. Walking around the forest and trees, the weather is sunny. There's loads of bees. In the distance I see smoke wisping through the sky. I'm wondering what it could be. Is something awry? As I get nearer, I hear lots of commotion. Laughing and singing, loads of emotion. I hide behind a bush so that I can get a peek. What I seen in that camp made my stomach weak. Eamon dancing in a slave Leia costume for large bipedal apes. What the hell? This is better evidence than the Patterson Gimlin tapes. I run and leave Eamon at the Sasquatch camp. When I share this footage, it will make me a champ.
Oh.
So what do you have to say about that anyway?
So I'm trying to tap in now to the memories that have been suppressed.
Right.
By what you've said there. So just again, so the story's clear, because what happened, I find it very hard to focus when these memories are coming through. It's like waking from a dream. Your pineal gland is just amped. So I was wearing a Princess Leia costume.
I believe I got the impression that they had sort of kidnapped you and were holding you against your will.
Oh, I wasn't enjoying the dancing or nothing.
It was hard to tell. You sort of appeared like you're under the influence of perhaps some forest mushrooms or something like that.
Oh yeah. Okay, I'm gonna give me a second. I'm just gonna try to just tap back into this and see if we get any latent memories, any repressed memories.
Right.
Just give me a second now. So Leia,
It's a song.
Princess Leia costume. I don't know what's gonna come out of me now, and you know, I'm just trying to get into it. So, alright, so what's coming up is I'm in my gold bikini doing a little dance. The Bigfoots are watching me as I prance and prance. I love this prancing. Ooh, sexy monkey man.
I like that. That was. Did you have the cantina?
Yeah, I was trying to do like a jazz or like lounge cantina.
That was quite a hypnotic song there. I'm sure that the bipedal apes appreciated
Well,
that. Right?
I think that they probably would have hypnotized me in the first goings. I probably learned that skill from them. You know, the Sasquatch. Their sort of strange ways. They mesmerize and hypnotize, like System of a Down albums that aren't as good as the older albums.
Yes. I've heard that indeed. What is going on, everyone? Rob here, and with me is...
It's your boy, Eamon.
And we are Monster Fuzz Podcast. And if you haven't guessed already, we are talking about the Bigfoot in this episode, Eamon, isn't that right?
Yeah, this, I think, the heaviest of hitters when it comes to the cryptids. He is the M. Bison of the cryptids. Yeah. He's the boss. He's the final boss. And as I think we couldn't do a good service to Bigfoot. Well, I did in my Leia costume, but we couldn't fully service. Well, I mean, again, I did fully service a Bigfoot pod. You wouldn't be able to do it with one episode. So this is like the toe in the water episode, and more to come.
Yeah, so I think on Apple, I'm not sure about Spotify, on some of the streaming platforms, you can actually release like a series. You can sort of archive a group of episodes into like a series, and I will be doing that with the Bigfoot ones. So there will be probably 3 to 4 episodes, more likely 4, and then maybe in future, then, you know, there's so many sightings. Again, as we've discussed before, there's Bigfoot podcasts that are just dedicated to searching for him. So there's an endless well of material on Bigfoot. So we will, as Eamon said, dip our toes into it as we see fit over the course of the podcast. And much the same goes for Loch Ness and some of the heavier hitters, I suppose.
Any of the big, yeah, like, I mean, I'd even say, you know, we could probably revisit guys like the Mothman. Yeah. You know, a lot of guys that we've covered even already, because I'd say there's lots more to do that you could do with the Wendigo, with skinwalkers, you know, so we'll wait and see how it plays out, you know, but definitely Bigfoot needs a few episodes for sure.
Indeed, yeah, he's a special cryptid, so we'll definitely do our due diligence. That's a hard word to say.
Do some.
Yeah, and guys, before we get into this episode, quick little homemade ads. You know, this is all our stuff. It's not, we're not reading about shitty mattresses or toothbrushes or whatever. We are on Patreon, folks. Patreon.com/monsterfuzz. And again, big wow, Eamon. Patreon is the most fun. We have our Discord. We have vlogs. I forgot to mention that in the last episode. We have a lot of vlogs. There's a lot of content, so the longer Patreon goes on, the more content there will be for a new subscriber. So obviously, you know, if you're listening now, you've got 2-3 months worth of content behind you now. So you've got all the vlogs from when we started, and you have all that other cool stuff that we will release all over the place. So we had vlogs at the Grave River sort of area. And we've got the Discord. The Discord is always fun. A lot of like-minded individuals. It's a safe space from any silly chat, isn't that right, Eamon?
Very much so. Very, very, very chill. It's not very safe for me. No. Lowell's rendition, his story of what was happening in the Ewok village. You know, so it's safe for the rest of you, though. He'll be grand. Hughes will be fine.
Yeah, it's fun. It's fun there, and there's no like talk of politics or coronavirus or anything that is like, you know, a bit heavy at this current time. So definitely do jump over if you like that. Also, we have our merch at teespring.com/stores/monster-fuzz. Actually seeing Eamon today, and obviously this is, you know, 3 weeks in the future, this episode, but one of our listeners picked up the original artwork for the podcast in a tee.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it looks cool.
That's I'd say that would look pretty good in a tee. My parents were quite impressed by the t-shirts.
Yeah, no, they're cool.
Pretty awesome.
Yeah, no, they're good stuff. Twitter, guys, is MonsterFuzzPod, and yeah, I'm on Twitter fairly often. I use it as much as I can, I guess you could say, and I try to be active enough on there, and everywhere else is MonsterFuzz Podcast. I like using Instagram quite a lot, so you can always reach out to me on Instagram. Eamon, where are we for emails?
For emails, we are monsterfuzzpodcast@gmail.com. We want you to send in your spookiest stories. Is the story just a spooky story in that, like, you got such a fright one day when you thought that you had left your keys in the car that you shat your own pants, Weetabix and orange juice? Like, those stories are spooky too. We want all types of spooky stories. What terrifies you? Are you afraid of elevators? Give us a call. Let us know what that's like. All the stuff. Is it a giant robot that's after eating you? Is that what it feels like, being digested slowly as you go down the floors? I want to know all the stuff that scares you.
Yeah, exactly. What makes you tick? Let us know at monsterfuzzpodcast@gmail.com. We've had some great submissions in there, so do continue to send them in.
Some great stories, yeah.
Yeah. And yeah, just guys, before we get into it, a big shout out in general to all our patrons, and we do appreciate it quite a lot. Every day it's a trip. Like, usually, Eamon, when I wake up now, like, I'll put my phone on, do not disturb before I go to sleep. And usually when I wake up, like, there's a ton of interaction with fans on Instagram and Twitter. It's really cool to just wake up to and interact with people, you know?
Usually when I wake up, I just have my laptop and I immediately start work. And then by the time that's over, I'm so tired. I'm just like,
in bed.
Yeah, so just sleeping and laptops.
Yeah. Well, that sounds... Well, it doesn't sound fun.
No, it's rubbish. It's rubbish.
You should probably get into some of that monsterful social media.
Yeah,
so
I'm gonna have to get more involved.
Yeah. So here it is, guys. It is time for Monsterfuls to tackle the mighty Bigfoot, aka Sasquatch, as he likes to be identified as formally. We plan on attacking them, like we said, over the course of a few episodes, and yeah, each one is going to be a fairly different, solid theme. So this particular episode is Origins. In the future, we'll have a Sightings episode in which we'll talk about the Patterson-Gimlin footage in detail. We'll talk about some of the modern sightings, some of the most credible modern things, the evidence, all that. And then we'll do possible explanations in another episode, Eamon, yeah?
Yeah, I think so. I don't know if I ever told you, Rob, but I, for a long time, and still do, I was listening to a podcast called Sasquatch Chronicles, right?
Right.
And it's basically like lads ring in and just tell you about the time they saw Sasquatch or Dogman. They're the two main ones that pop up. But dude, the shit is off the chain. Like you know, we said we're talking about Bigfoot being sort of a well that can't be drained. Some of those stories that come on are just like, it's shit. You just can't, like, I have it down at the very end of the episode here. Maybe I'll reference one or two, but like, they're just sort of like, here. It's just lads, I saw the Bigfoot, and I mean, I gotta tell you, she looked pretty good to me. You know, there's literally, like, that's not me taking the piss. There's stories like that. It's a fantastic podcast, though. If you want to hear some of the stuff about Bigfoot and some of the weird other stuff that happens in the dead of night in the forests, really interesting. And you know, it's like one of those things. If you have 1,000 people who say they've seen Bigfoot and only one has and is correct, that's a game changer. You know?
Yeah, for sure. It's with a cryptid with so many sightings as well. It is very interesting, and to be honest, Bigfoot is one of the guys that I kind of skipped over. You know, it's like when everyone tells you to watch a TV show that's super popular and you haven't watched it and you're just like, no, I don't want to hear anymore about it. I was kind of like that with Bigfoot. He was like one of the, I wouldn't say least favourite cryptids of me. I don't think that's fair. But he was one that I was always just like, yeah, let's get to the more, you know, lesser known stuff. That was always what sort of appealed to me. I'm a cryptid hipster, if you get me.
I get you, because Bigfoot's like the Metallica. And maybe you want to be listening to some of the more underground type stuff. But Bigfoot is like, he's in the cryptid world, he is probably like Metallica, the biggest metal bands?
Yeah, you could say that, I suppose, yeah. Slipknot would be up there too now at this point. They're huge.
Yeah. That's true. Yeah, I didn't realise how big Slipknot were. I suppose
they're massive.
Metallica have the staying power, maybe.
Oh, yeah.
You know? Maybe he's the Metallica of cryptids. But, you know, Metallica have some very good tunes.
Well, this is it, yeah. I mean, they have plenty of songs related to cryptids, as we've discussed in other episodes too, yeah.
There's
Shift!
We're nice, man!
So basically that was it for me, guys. I had felt like Bigfoot had been done to death, but are we a cryptid podcast if we don't have Bigfoot episodes, Eamon?
You gotta take it on. You gotta just sit down and be like, we're gonna do it. We're gonna fucking do it. Okay, so
if unlike me, you do not know anything about Bigfoot, he is a large ape, human-like creature, so generally about 7 foot tall, Eamon, right?
Yeah, that seems to be the going height of a Bigfoot is in around 7 feet tall. So one of the things they say a lot with Bigfoot is when you look at branches that are like, I don't know, 7, 8, 9 feet tall, they'll have these like perfect snaps. And they'd say this is Bigfoot, like breaking the branch as he traipses through the forest.
Okay, yeah, I get you. Yeah, I've heard some of that. Yeah, and also I've seen some, like, sometimes they say like if branches are like sort of. Sometimes I've seen pictures of branches like tied in knots almost.
Yeah.
And I say like that's a Bigfoot thing as well, right?
There's that. Yeah. There's the branch side knot. There's stuff like they sort of push trees together in almost like kind of a teepee type thing, right? Which again, people say like, how could you know? Well, this is what the Bigfoot enthusiasts say is like they put that to the only animal that would do is Bigfoot, because bears obviously wouldn't be trying to create something, is their logic. Yeah. Well, that makes sense. That, I suppose a lot of that stuff is to differentiate between the two. It's like, well, no, it's not a bear, it's definitely Sasquatch because he's doing that type of behaviour. Yeah. Another thing about Sasquatch and Bigfoot, which
maybe a lot of people don't know if they're sort of ignorant to the topic, is that he's actually another Native American cryptid, in that he has his origins do lie with the Native American or the First Nation people of America, or some people call them Native Indians, and I think some of them prefer to be called that.
Yeah, no idea. But whether we say Native American, Native Indian, First Nations, whatever, we are saying it with the utmost respect. So if you don't like the way we say it, apologies in advance. But also, sorry, like, there's bigger problems. There's bigger problems in your life. Come on.
We've got bigger feet to fry here.
Whoa, look at that.
Oh. So yeah, the lads did have it really rough. I mean, they've got the Wendigo, Skinwalkers. What else have they got in Native America?
Wendigo,
there's quite
Skinwalker,
a few.
they have himself. There's another one I was thinking of earlier. The Wendigo, the Skinwalker.
It's not a dog man. He's one of the ones that doesn't come from there. But yeah, we'll figure it out.
I think I have notes in here as we go down. There's Wendigo, Skinwalker, and something else. Yeah, but he's there anyway. But they've loads. If you go do a quick wiki search on Native American cryptids, and it's just like shit. I'm gonna be a while. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, for sure. Speaking of Native Americans and stuff like that, the name Sasquatch is actually derived from the name Saskets, or Sasquatch probably, from the Halkamalam language spoken by First Nation peoples in southwestern BC. Eamon, was that kind of where you were?
Yeah, I would have been in British Columbia. So I was in Vancouver.
You're in Vancouver, that would be southwest, wouldn't it? Right?
Yeah, but we went, when I was working landscaping, we would have done a little bit of travelling around. So the closest I saw to Bigfoot was I saw a bear. Saw two bears, two black bears.
Well, that's pretty cool.
Down in Whistler, or up in Whistler, wherever it was. Yeah, it was pretty cool, man, really cool. It was also quite nerve-wracking for a person who comes from Ireland, where the most dangerous animal is I don't know.
Some lad on a Saturday night.
Well, yeah, or milking a cow. That's probably the most dangerous animal in Ireland, when you're milking a cow if it falls on you, or a horse if it falls on you. That's the most dangerous shit we have here.
Yeah, a horse if it kicks you. A bull. A bull is another honourable mention.
Actually, yeah, bulls and bulls
are underrated, man.
You don't
people forget about bulls.
I was out during the lockdown. I took a long cycle. First time when I started cycling, I went 10 kilometers out to Oilgate, right? And I got a coffee, and I was just there. I said I'd just chill out for a while, so I was kind of laying up against an old gate to a field. And all these cows, man, I didn't realise how curious. Never mind cats being curious, cows are curious. They all just slowly walked up to me, real slowly, like fucking zombies, right? And then they were just there looking at me, and I was like, all right, lads. And I was trying to feed them grass or something, but they were super curious, came super close, but were too afraid to bridge the final gap, And then I sneezed, and they all just ran off, I had shot a gun at them, you know? So cows, Good characters, good lads. No, lovely. Do you know cows have lovely eyelashes?
Oh, they're majestic.
Lovely
beautiful.
Eyelashes. If I could find a woman with the eyes of a cow, she'd be so. It's just so nice.
There is a girl in town who has the eyes of a cow, and I believe she actually charges people to take pictures with her.
What's her name?
Sally.
Sally Cowman.
Yes, Sally Cowman.
Sally Cowman.
And. People, I mean, it's again like Medusa. You look at her and you're just, except you don't turn into stone. Your Mickey turns into stone. And that's it, yeah.
And that's, is it fall off, or is it just, it stays there, but it's just
stays there. It's actually a cure for erectile dysfunction.
Right, but does it turn to stone, and if you're not on the horn, then is it just a permanent malady?
Horn soft.
Yeah, the hardest malady. Soft dick ever.
Yeah, I suppose so, yeah. I suppose that can happen. You'd have to ask Sally, really. Maybe she'll come on the podcast.
With Tracy, Sally. Sally, if you're listening, love your eyes, love your eyelashes, love that you can make a dick rock hard soft. So good. Great stuff.
Yeah, they actually, as well, Mengele from our Huska episode, he spent many years trying to put cow eyes into people to replicate the effects that Sally had.
Jesus.
But
that actually sounds like something Mengele would do, just without the Sally bit, but putting cow's eyes into people.
He probably did that, the mad bastard, to be fair to him.
Yikes.
Eamon, So whereabouts is this Sasquatch said to inhabit?
Yeah, so the Sasquatch is meant to inhabit Oregon and areas around the west coast of the USA, but there's plenty of sightings all over the States and Canada and further afield. So, like, in fact, if you check most cultures, they have some sort of Bigfoot-esque wild man.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah,
yes,
it's happening all the time. We've covered before the Yeti in the Himalayas. We've also looked at in their Japanese Hibigong, with his
bear arse.
cute little bear arse. Yeah. So like they're only 3 altogether, and then you've got Gigantopithecus, which is effectively the actual prehistoric, not dinosaur, but the hominid that was a Bigfoot. So yeah, very interesting stuff. You
forgot the bloody Yowie down in Oz.
The bloody Yowie.
Yeah, he's down in Oz. We'll be doing an episode on him.
That's
on the Yowie.
True, yeah. When it comes to the Australian accents, I can only do happy Australia. Otherwise, I go Cockney, so I'd be like, oh, the bloody Yowie.
We also have the Agogwe of East Africa.
Yeah, that's right.
We also have Orang Mawas of Indonesia. So you get the idea, sort of. There is a metric hape of Bigfoot type cryptids, which is actually an Irish unit of measurement. Is a hape,
a big hape. You can and you can actually fall down into a hape as well, which you become a metric weight, if you like, when you fall into a hape. Yeah,
indeed. Yeah. Fascinatingly, the FBI have actually DNA tested Bigfoot hair samples, and unfortunately, they were deer. And Eamon, what other trait does Bigfoot have?
I think the most impressive trait that Bigfoot has is his big feet. Big feet.
Yes.
Now, you don't often hear this is a funny one. I was talking about listening to all those Sasquatch podcasts before, right?
Yeah.
They were saying that when Bigfoot chases you, right? So, like, obviously we're talking about the big feet, and the thing that's mostly connected with big feet would be big socks, but also sentient Mickeys. So, as Bigfoot is chasing you, apparently he can't help but wee all over the place.
Oh, really?
And this came up in a lot of there's also...
It's like you and the Hunter interview.
It's like me every time I have to not go to a toilet for more than 25 minutes. Like, ladies and gentlemen, my bladder is like... I was born with one kidney or something. I don't know what the problem is. Is that what it is?
Diabetes makes you weigh a lot.
But I've been like this since I was like 13 or 14.
Yeah. Just maybe your bladder never grew up. Maybe you just wanted to be young forever.
May you stay. Well, it'd be great if it didn't make me want to piss myself as much. That's where we are. But yeah, so apparently Bigfoot, you'd think Bigfoot will have a massive schlong or whatever, but people don't report Bigfoot's massive knob very often.
I think monkeys generally have small Mickeys, right?
Gorillas.
I'm not a Mickey expert.
Monkey mickers. Gorillas have really small dicks, right?
Yeah.
But chimps apparently have bigger dicks. The reason is something to do with the way Joe Rogan has been talking about monkeys.
Yes, all the time.
They're basically us, but they're like hairy. It's crazy. Monkeys. Yeah, exactly. But basically, I think the gorilla has tiny little wee because there's not a lot of competition in terms of
it doesn't need to.
breeding.
I mean, it does look,
But I think chimps and other monkeys, like you got that big piece, that big hog.
Do you reckon that the gorilla has a? Do you reckon that the reason the gorilla is so big is because he's overcompensating for small willy?
I think that's part of it. Like whenever you see like a bodybuilder, a guy who's really, really huge and muscular,
exactly.
I'd always be thinking to myself, I'd be like, man, if
overcompensating.
Well, not overcompensating, but even if he just had a normal sized pecker, like the fact that the rest of your body is so big, like that'd be like, it must be kind of weird. If you're a listener who's ever slept with like a massively testosterone muscular gentleman, like sort of John Cena type kind of a character, someone like that, Batista, one of those wrestling guys, do write in, tell us how was the
Monsterfuls fanfic?
Yeah, how was the size? Was it good? Did it sort of break the illusion of what was happening? Was the reality? A famous radio host in Ireland, Ray Darcy, said you should never live out your fantasies because they'll bring your house to the ground. It'll ruin things for you. Was that your experience when you had sex with the small dong big man?
Okay, yeah. Okay, well, monsterfuzzpodcast@gmail.com for that one, guys.
Please.
Eamon, just when did it all begin? When did the first Bigfoot sightings occur?
Well, that is not an easy question to answer, Robert.
Okay, all right. Well, silly me.
I know. No, look. You're looking for the low-hanging fruit, but I'm afraid these apples are up high.
Oh, okay.
Right. There's been reports of half man, half animal creatures going back as far as the Epic of Gilgamesh, which is the oldest piece of epic world literature. The wild man is in Gilgamesh. We have the hero Gilgamesh, who basically becomes friends with Enkidu, who seems like sort of to represent the non-woke man. So
he don't use Twitter, yeah.
He doesn't use Twitter, no. So it's like myself. So this is like the old. Enkidu is the wild man, is it? He's
like
the
you,
old
yeah.
school,
So he has the wooden phone and all that. And I'm Gilgamesh.
He lives in the Ewok village. That means you defeat me. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's what happened.
So yeah, us in our primary state. Now, Gilgamesh kicks the shit out of Enkidu, but then they become mates.
Ah.
Yeah, a representation of our shift to modern man. And there's loads and loads and loads and loads and loads and loads and loads of stuff like this as you go back into sort of ancient literature.
And wolf stuff as well, right? This is kind of ties in with all of our werewolf stuff, right?
Yes. A lot of stuff like that, especially wolves, dogs, any sort of, I don't know what you'd say, aggressive animal. They draw similarities between it.
Yeah. Are you actually? You might have seen this. Gordo, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here
there for a minute.
Yeah, I think it went down for a second.
Yeah, Gordo's actually done an episode on Peter Stump there yesterday.
Oh, that's right.
Unrelated note, he covered the same kind of thing.
Chomp chomp.
Yeah, so I think as you were saying there, it was seems to be a recurring theme even amongst our episodes.
Yeah, definitely. I think I think we've talked about it before, that these half animal, half man hybrids, oftentimes it's some sort of a way that you're differentiating. It seems, to me, at the point, as culture and society are starting to kind of burgeon and sort of make more sense, it seems like we're trying to write these kind of stories that encourage people to step away from the wilderness and to step more into society, you know?
Isn't that weird how, it's kind of gone full circle? Because, a lot of the popular mainstream media and literature now kind of encourages hedonism.
Yeah. Well, I think it's I suppose you have to, no matter what happens, if you take it to its sort of entropic end, it becomes unsustainable. Like, our society now, in my opinion, is starting to become pretty unsustainable in the last 50 years.
Yeah, we're getting there now. We're getting to the messing time, all right.
Yeah. So we're kind of going, we have, we hacked the atom bomb, or the atom rather, and we've made nuclear energy. It won't go away for 10,000 years. We've only had it for, 70 or 80. It's effectively like a little sun. And if anything goes wrong, as we've seen happen a couple of times, no bueno. And what do we do? We're just like, oh no, you're just cool. You keep spraying water on it and bury it. We're not thinking with our good brains all the time.
We're not. No, it is an interesting gamble, that nuclear energy, because some people reckon that it's the future. It's the only form of sustainable future. And then, all you have to look at is something like Chernobyl and sort of go, yikes.
Yeah, and then you look at Japan, where tectonic plates and tidal waves, and then that fucks up the nuclear reactor.
Yeah.
And again, look, I'm not against nuclear energy.
No.
I'm just saying it doesn't seem sustainable for 10,000 years, is all.
Yeah, probably not. It's probably not great for the long term, but sure, look, we'll see how it pans out. But so as we've said, it's a recurring theme for us. And another reference to this, half animal man type of thing, comes from Jacob and Esau. Esau.
Yeah,
I was thinking that from the Bible. So this is a Bible story. Esau wasn't really an animal as such, but he was red-haired, which is weird, as we know.
No,
we have a red-haired person.
Red hair is the. I heard that red-haired men, no one wants to breed with, but red-haired women are doing okay. So that's discouraging.
And also, red hair origins are actually from Africa, apparently.
Yeah.
Yeah. I read that years ago, and it kind of makes sense if you think about it, because most red-haired, and you can attest to this as well, have like very wiry, curly hair.
Yeah, my hair is bananas. With the lads say often that my hair is like where a black guy's hair meets a white guy's hair. That's what my hair is. It's so thick. And like my girlfriend is black, and like we've sort of tried to figure out whose hair is the thicker. She's winning, but I'm not too far behind her. Yeah.
It's so that's worth looking up, guys, if any of you are red-haired, and I actually do know that a few of our listeners are red-headed, so there's a bit of history for you. Go and look it up. Maybe I'm talking out my ass, but I don't think so. I'm pretty sure I read that somewhere. But anyway, so Esau was more of a hunter than Jacob. So Jacob was a bit of a soy boy and was said to sort of enjoy the odd latte macchiato while browsing his MacBook Air in Starbucks.
I believe that was Genesis 15:7, was it?
Yeah, it was.
And so Jacob sat with his soy macchiato.
Yeah, that was it exactly. And yeah, as we know, guys, if you really want to check out the half man, half animal ideas, do check out the Werewolf Trials, the Wendigo, and Yeti are all great places to go.
And even the Skinwalker it's not quite half man, half animal, but there's definitely
transgression is
exactly.
the theme.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So yeah, I suppose the reason that we mention it is to just illustrate that, and it's worth pondering that if there indeed were a more animal man, how did they live in comparison to our modern man, as we know man? So think of it as, a fairly upright, erect, not in the penis, Homo sapien. With less hair than, say, a Neanderthal, who they did live alongside.
Yeah.
Were there a branch of Homo sapien that were more animal-like than the rest of the Homo sapien?
Yeah, well, I don't know too much. There's like Homo erectus, Homo sapien, Neanderthal, all that sort of stuff. But I think there's a good few offshots.
There is, as loads,
as evolution sort of trying to figure out what the strongest, what the best mechanism for survival is. And there's some of them that just basically couldn't survive, died out because they just weren't equipped enough to deal with what was happening.
What do you reckon was like the aim of these cautionary tales to sort of impart on the people that heard them? Like, do you what way were they living like that? Yeah. That was so bad that they wanted to take them out of that.
Well, here's one that's interesting, right? Back then, when you start to think of the tales of the Bigfoot, so you're talking back in sort of Western times, right? Yeah. The tales of the Bigfoot there, those big feet, let's say, are actually more socialized than our tales of the Bigfoot now. Right. So back then it was almost as if it was saying, I don't know, it was saying like, you shouldn't do that, but it was less removed from society almost, whereas now the Bigfoot is completely gone from society.
Oh, okay, I kind of get what you're saying.
It's a strange thing. There's one type of Bigfoot, I can't remember his name off the top of my head. He's one of those ape creatures. His name's probably, Jeremy Irons. But he, the man in the mask. But he carried a lantern in the forest, and this Bigfoot would carry a lantern, so it wasn't that wild. Bigfoot nowadays, it's sort of a wild, animalistic, slightly more going on upstairs. Like, I don't know, maybe as smart as a dolphin or something like that.
Right.
But adapted to the forest.
Yeah, a dolphin holding a lantern?
A dolphin holding a lantern covered in hair, just going like, what the fuck happened? Yeah.
Screaming.
Kill me!
So it's an interesting thing to dwell on, guys, as I'm not a religious person. I'm vaguely spiritual. But that was one thing that I always thought the Bible was, in my opinion, it was basically cautionary tales. It was ways to sort of pull mankind out of the shit, so to speak. Yeah. And it probably backfired in some ways, because a lot of shenanigans went on in the Bible's name also. Yeah. But the intentions were probably good.
Absolutely. I think back in those days, I think human beings probably needed something.
Absolutely.
and again, I'm not religious, I'm spiritual or whatever, like, but
Yeah.
I think we probably needed something that we would have to live by and think was real to sort of urge us to do maybe what we were starting to understand was the right thing to do in the tribal sense, in the cultural sense, to communicate with our brethren and all that sort of stuff. Because, you know, chaos, obviously, chaos is like, too much chaos is no good, but you need a little bit of chaos. Too much order is no good, but you need probably a little bit more order than chaos.
It also could have been the Bible could actually be the best example of the thinking man getting the one over on the brute, because, you know, I would imagine that if you were a thinking man back in those days, let's say that your mind had maybe been a little more developed than the average person of the time, you would have been able to figure out the injustices and what was wrong with basically the strongest barbarian owning the village, or some guy coming in raping and pillaging everyone, murdering everyone. Well, I suppose, so maybe these guys, you know, sort of devised a plan to let's try and put our way of thinking into their heads, and hopefully it works out. Yeah.
I mean, and I think, like, even if you think of Socrates and Plato and the Greeks, you know, there was a lot of stuff where they were coming out with things that weren't socially, let's say, acceptable. Like Socrates talked a lot about how every man is created equal. There's no man that's better than another, which is totally in opposition to what the thought would have been in society at the time. And thought in a lots of society, like the idea of pulling yourself up by your bootstraps, which there's a certain amount to it. Like, people have to put in the effort and have to do the best they can. But the other side of it is, people are born in very, very, very different situations from one another. So you can't expect, like, if you were born in the depths of despair and poverty, born addicted to heroin and blah blah blah, that you're just going to be able to have the same opportunities as someone who was born to maybe a wealthy family who were very good parents, made sure that they emotionally engaged with their child and all that sort of stuff, a lot of positive affirmation. Do you know what I mean? It's a very squirrely thing, and I think even those ancient Greeks could kind of see, they're like, well, we're all created equal. Society itself isn't the thing that we can define ourselves by, wealth and power and this and that and the other. It's more the journey and more understanding things and questioning and that kind of a thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I agree with you 100%. It's definitely food for thought, guys, and just put yourself in the mind frame of back then, when you had sort of the classes back then, I suppose, were like those that were a lot more animalistic than those that weren't. So it's a very interesting time. Eamon, tell us about the Native Americans.
Well, this is an interesting one, actually, that I hadn't heard of. They tell tales of the Stick Indians, or the Tsiatko. Did I say that right? Tsiatko?
I actually thought a Native American had got on the microphone there, to be honest.
Yeah, well, actually, no, he's just after leaving, but I paid him 20 quid, you know, cool. But he's been mimicking me all day. I think he's a skinwalker, because he can mimic me perfectly. He's a lovely young fella. He's a lovely young fella. He's after turning into an old, and now he's after turning into a pigeon, and he's flown away, and now he's turned into a cat, and he's just on the ground. He's a nice chap. But anyway, so the Tsiatko, basically, they were wild men who lived in the woods and would attack women and children. Stick Indians are a diverse category of potentially hostile beings who stole salmon or confused people by whistling, causing them to become lost. That was quite confusing there when you did that. I thought that was that young fella that I paid to say Tsiatko. He's back. He's after taking me chips. I was eating me curry chips. He's after taking me curry chips. Sightings and stories continue on reservations today, representing a spiritual connection to the pre-contact past and the resilience of indigenous cultural heritage. And as you said before, the poor Native Americans, I mean, they've no peace between the skinwalkers, the Wendigo, the Stick Indians. It seems like a
white man.
Yeah, Jesus, it's surprising. Surprising that white man was the one that did the most damage, isn't it? When they had all these monsters,
for sure. But these could perhaps be our Bigfoot seeds, if you will. These account for basically some of the most early strange going on in the woods, these Stick Indians. And it's good reading if you guys want to check it out. Just go and research Stick Indians. So this is basically planting the seeds for unusual goings on in North America. And it's also worth noting, not quite sure if I've mentioned this on the podcast, for those of you unaware, the Native Americans, how they got to Native America was across a land bridge that actually over the years was covered by ocean. They came from China and made their way to America, and then they were basically trapped by this ocean, so that once used land bridge, obviously it was a huge amount of land, but once that was gone. So it is possible that the Indians followed migrating animals to and from these spots. But yeah, so that's how they got there. So originally Native Americans were from China. And it's interesting. And then Sasquatch, Eamon, or Saskets, as we said, is a literal translation to wild man.
Interesting.
So it's an interesting thing. It's a wild man who's at war with the Chehalis tribe. The tribe describes Sasquatch as their mortal enemy. Pretty cool to think about this. It's a native tribe who are actively at war with Sasquatch.
It's very interesting, yeah. And that sounds like it would make an awesome movie.
Yeah.
I'd like to see that movie. Have you ever seen the movie Bone Tomahawk?
I have not. It sounds quite good.
Very good. It's about... Oh, jeez, how would you even explain it? It's basically about people that get captured by Indians, but all is not what it seems. But a very good movie. Very good movie.
What's going on up in the mountains of BC?
Oh, up in the mountains of BC. Take me home. So the existence of a troglodytic race. I think troglodyte is a troglodyte, someone who lives in a cave. Troglodytic. Yep. Troglodyte's a good jeer if you ever need
cave dwelling.
Cave dweller, yeah. If you ever need to jeer someone, troglodyte seems to work well, because most people don't really know what it means. So you'd be like, "Oh, you're a dope." You're like, "Sure, you're a fucking troglodyte." And then
that's an old one, yeah.
Yeah, it's a good one.
Yeah.
So the existence of a troglodytic race inhabiting the mountains of British Columbia in many of the vast caves is a tribal legend among the Chehalis Indians and those of the Squaw Reservation near Chilliwack in the Harrison Lake district, about 100 miles east of Vancouver. And I think I remember people talking about Chilliwack a lot. And I think I might have been there, actually. I think I could be totally wrong, but we went to Whistler. And Chilliwack, I think there was a big mountain face that people used to scale. I think. I could be totally wrong. It's called the Chief, maybe.
Okay, yeah, that sounds
it's going years
sounds
back.
Like it's right.
I could be going totally the wrong direction, but wherever I was, it was on the way to Whistler. But basically, yeah, the creature Sasquatch seems to occur in many native cultures, as we've been talking about. And again, this is interesting, it seems to be half a spiritual entity. Now, what's interesting about this is remember our very first episode, shout out to Makele Membe.
The classic.
The classic. They were talking there about the Congolese people, saying that they didn't differentiate between folklore and reality in the same way that we would here. They were one and the same. So maybe interesting to I think the native cultures were similar as well in the way that they would have thought about reality, let's say.
Indeed, because I mean, they don't have Wikipedia. So like these pygmies, like the chief of the pygmies comes along and he goes, "Oh, there's a 15-foot Quetzalcoatlus down the river there," and they can't fact check, so they just have to take his word for it. So you could get some chief that's taking the complete fucking piss, and he could be essentially the J.R.R. Tolkien of the jungle, making up all these mad stories, and he could have come up with all this crazy shit that we're reading right now.
He could have.
Yeah.
But how would we explain the modern day sightings? How would we explain all the craziness that people seem to see? Could we be creating it ourselves? In the form of a tulpa, yeah.
Ah, yes, of course.
Who knows?
Much like Cornwallis was given life by this podcast, it could be the same with Sasquatch. But yeah, he's all over the States, and that's kind of like he seems to be all over the States and all over the world, really, in some form. Members of the Lummi, I think they're another tribe. They tell tales about Semeques, the local version of Bigfoot. The stories are similar to each other in the general descriptions of Semeques, but details differed among various family accounts concerning the creature's diet and activities. Some regional versions tell of more threatening creatures. The Stiaha or Quiai were a nocturnal race. Children were warned against saying their names, lest the monsters hear and come to carry off the person, sometimes to be killed. So again, you're getting the idea, guys. Spooky stuff in the woods is the TLDR with all that stuff. But, Eamon, we've got modern accounts. What is one of the earliest that we have found?
Yeah, so in 1818, the Long Island Star is described as, which I believe is the newspaper who were. So they described the Bigfoot as bending forward when running, hairy, and the heel of the foot narrow, spreading at the toes. So that's an interesting one. We also have in 1847 Paul Kane, not to be confused with the wrestler Kane, who came around later, or Paul.
Oh, thanks for clearing that up.
Yeah, thanks. Or Paul Crane, who I believe is a Wexford musician. So there you go. Wasn't him or him. So in 1847, Paul Kane reported stories by the Indians about skookums, a race of cannibalistic wild men living on the peak of Mount St. Helens in the southern Washington state.
What's going on in Arkansas?
Well, you see, isn't that interesting though? Because you do get, like, there were historical cases of wild cannibals in the kind of I mean, even they were in Red Dead Redemption, I'm pretty sure, right?
Well, yeah, well, that's real life.
That's it's as close as to any video game's ever gotten to real life in my eyes.
That's true.
But I think it was based on historical newspaper reportings and stuff at the time.
Yokels hopped up on Jenkum, no tops on, holes in their jeans, kidnapping people and eating them. Yeah, that happens. The Hills Have Eyes is another classic.
Well, the Weekly Arkansas, I always say Arkansas, the Weekly Arkansas Gazette in 1851 said they were followed by an animal bearing the unmistakable likeness of humanity. He was of gigantic stature, the body being covered with hair. Sounds like me dad.
Your dad wouldn't be gigantic though.
He's covered with hair though.
Is he? I'm gigantic, but I have no hair.
Yeah, you're like a seal. You're very like streamlined.
I'm aerodynamic. I can't grow a beard for the fucking life of me, and no body hair really either.
Yeah, I have wiry red hair, but I have like just the right amount of hair.
I have the greyed out back down in me fucking pants, like, but I don't have anything, other than that, really. As it
remains untouched for the last.
He's hanging down there. In the Southern Shield, another sighting happened in 1852. He is described by them as being about 7'2", as we said earlier, and covered completely with black hair, interspersed now and then with a bit of grey. So maybe he's perhaps an older Sasquatch, a senior Sasquatch. In the Cincinnati Enquirer in 1895, she was suddenly confronted by a naked giant who sprang into the road in front of her horse, making savage gestures and yelling.
That sounds like me dad as well.
Has he done that, yeah?
Yeah, just jumps into the middle of the road, just...
Nice. There's a historical record of Bigfoot in the Oregon country. I don't know why I typed it that way, but it begins in 1904 with sightings of a hairy wild man by settlers in the Sixes River area in the Coast Range. Similar accounts by miners and hunters followed in later decades. In 1924, miners on Mount St. Helens claimed to have been attacked by giant apes. So these miners were actually, they were dead set. We were attacked by giant apes in the mountains. And that incident was widely reported by the Oregon Press at the time. But, Eamon, you were abducted by Sasquatches, and I know that your memory is not good with it.
No, but I mean, they let me go, I think, because my dancing in the Princess Leia, it was like doing a show for a load of Wookiees, like it was, and they were happy.
Solid Wookiee.
Yeah, they were happy.
But what about the other guy that was abducted by Sasquatch? Maybe he can shed some light on your life while you were there.
This is a fucking remarkably interesting story. Like I've heard this before. It's bananas, right?
Yeah, it is bananas.
Albert Ostman, okay?
Mm-hmm.
So he was a Canadian prospector who reported that he was abducted by a Sasquatch and held captive for 6 days.
Sounds like a good time, right?
Right, yeah. And they wouldn't have even had Princess Leia costumes back then. This is like 1924.
No, predates
you know? Yeah, so this is the Toba Inlet in British Columbia. Now, maybe I was I left largely unscathed because of my delicate hips and my good dancing. But what happened to Albert Ostman? Well, listen up. In 1924, Albert Ostman, he was a lumberjack and a woodsman, went to the area for a vacation. So this is the Toba Inlet. Ostman had heard stories about the man-beasts who supposedly roamed the woods, but refused to believe them, as many people would.
Oh, yeah.
As Ostman lay asleep one evening, a Sasquatch purportedly picked him up and carried him off while he was in his sleeping bag.
And you're fucked if you're in a sleeping bag if anyone tries to do anything with you, because you can't, you know.
Jason Voorhees killed a guy by just hitting him off a tree in his sleeping bag.
Yeah, you're very, like you said about me, you're very aerodynamic and streamlined in a sleeping bag, so you're fucked. Like.
Yeah, this is it. But he was carried in said sleeping bag across the country for 3 hours by the Sasquatch. Can you imagine that? Can you imagine by the third hour what must you be thinking?
Yeah, literally. Yeah.
Just
that's a fair hike.
Yeah, and like you would have had because you would have just assumed it was some sort of a bandit or something like that. So imagine like what you get out of it, you know? So, for example,
I went for like a real quick hour-long, maybe hour and a half hike the other day, and to be honest, we covered a lot of ground. So like 3 hours is definitely going to take you out of your comfort zone.
Yeah, man. Like you'd walk easily, I'd say, especially a Sasquatch, 7 feet tall, strides being quite lengthy. You could easily get 20, 15 kilometers in that 20.
Sasquatch should be killing Samsung Health.
Yeah, yeah. He'd be killing Samsung Health. You want to be like, slow down, you're running too fast. But the Sasquatch dropped Ostman down on a plateau, and when poor old Ostman, you know, I don't know if the Sasquatch helped him unzip the sleeping bag or how it worked, right? But when he basically was able to pop his head out, standing around him was a family of 4 of the creatures. And
very cute.
It sounds very cute right now, but he was kept captive by this Sasquatch. He reported that the captors were 3 adults and a child, which held Ostman captive for 6 days. Do you want to tell us about some of the more in-depth bits and pieces of this one?
Yeah. One of the Bigfoots, or Big Feets, was reported as being 8 feet tall. Ostman did not use his gun on them, as they had done him no harm. And I suppose then he probably had his gun on him in his holster, maybe, or at the bottom of the sleeping bag. There were all sorts of shenanigans around that time. He stayed with the Bigfoot family for a week, and he ate what he described as sweet-tasting grass that they gave him, which actually sounds pretty nice.
Yeah, it does. It does sound nice.
Yeah, was it like the mushrooms that you had, I wonder?
They might have given me sweet-tasting grass and then a Star Wars costume. They probably they were like, you can be Luke Skywalker if you want. It's our favourite movie. It was like, no, give me the Leia costume.
According to Ostman, the female Sasquatch washed and stacked leaves. So, she was very domesticated.
Yeah.
Was the female Sasquatch.
Well, it was like the male Sasquatch coming home with like a shirt and tie. Why aren't these leaves washed and stacked yet? For the love of God! It's like some sort of 1950s alcohol husband.
Yeah, comes in the front door, puts a suitcase down and backhands her.
Get
into the kitchen,
to the moon, Alice.
So she was just, stacking leaves, washing them, minding her business. And Albert escaped by making the large male Sasquatch groggy by feeding him a bit of snuff.
Right, so.
Snuff, I've had snuff. It usually makes me alert.
Yeah, it's I would be the same. The nicotine buzz.
Yeah.
Like it's like a caffeine hit or something.
Yeah, for sure, yeah. It's interesting stuff, actually, snuff. I don't condone using it, but at the same time, give it a go. He did not tell his story for more than 24 years after it happened, for fear of being thought of as crazy. Well, too late now. As more Sasquatch stories appeared in the press, Albert decided to tell his story to a local newspaper, which was called The Province, and that was all the way back in 1957. What you reckon, Eamon? He's what are you thinking so far?
There's not a lot of reports of friendly Sasquatches, to be fair. Like,
right.
I know we see, like, you have Harry and the Hendersons and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, he was nice.
Yeah, he was a nice chap, very cute looking, you know.
Yeah.
But the vast majority of the Sasquatch reports are quite scary, and even though nothing happens, people have like a feeling of terror. And I suppose you would if you saw something you'd never seen before that was a big giant ape man that could kill you.
Yeah.
You know, so that's interesting that this is it's a pretty, I don't know, let's say a benign encounter with Sasquatch.
Yeah, he just came out and sort of said it, like, and I suppose people sort of thought he was talking brown, right? But it turned out he got examined, yeah.
Yeah, so on August 20th, 1957, police magistrate A.M. Naismith wrote an affidavit which states, I found Mr. Osman to be a man of 64 years of age, in full possession of his mental faculties, of pleasant manner, and with a good sense of humour. I questioned Mr. Osman thoroughly in reference to the story given by Mr. Green. I cross-examined him and used every means to endeavour to find a flaw in either his personality or his story, but I could find neither. No.
Interesting.
So there you go. So Osman also signed a solemn declaration indicating that his account of the Sasquatch story was true under oath and by virtue of the Canadian Evidence Act.
Very, very interesting that, you know, he was cross-examined, and I suppose he was willing to be cross-examined because, I mean, you know, this isn't like a criminal case or anything, so I'd imagine he probably went into the police station and told his tale, right?
I don't know if you've ever watched any of those YouTube videos where basically it shows you someone who's been arrested. So they've done something like they've killed their girlfriend or they've killed someone, but they're pretending they didn't. And they basically just keep asking them the same questions in different ways at different times, and do kind of some of that cross-examination stuff as well. But when you're lying about something, it's incredibly hard to keep that lie
consistent.
Exactly, because you might say something like, say you're lying, like, oh yeah, they fed me like grass and it tasted sweet, and they'd be like, well, what kind of grass are you talking? Like, was it thick grass, was it thin grass? And so someone will ask you several different variations of what kind of the grass was. Those are little bits of roots at the end of it, asking you to tell it, and they're basically trying to make you say something you haven't said before, and they'll jump on that and capitalize it. So this is a pretty outlandish story. So you might say, like, well, how did you know you're in the sleeping bag for 3 hours? How did they get you out of the sleeping bag? Where exactly were the Sasquatch standing? What was around you when you saw him? And if you're making up a story, then you will effectively trip yourself up because you don't actually have a visual reference to go back and retell the story if you just made it up, you know what I mean? So like I'm here, like I've got the monitor in front of me, the PlayStation to the side, laptop to the left, I have my 3 little figures, and like I know what this looks like, so I can just revisit and go, okay, yeah, there's a lamp on the left, there's this on the right, blah blah blah.
Wooden shoes on the floor.
I'm wearing like shoes like Janny at the moment.
Nice,
loafers.
Nice,
they have like
loafers, former golfers.
Loafers are to Topher. No, what's a Topher Grace? Like the guy who played Venom. That wasn't great.
You and Gianni are brofers.
Brofers. There we go. Yeah, brofers. Yeah. Brofers with our loafers.
Yeah.
But yeah, basically they're getting away from talk of shoes and wooden phones. If you're making something up, you're not going to be able to recall a memory, and you're going to wind up tripping yourself up more often than not, unless you're an expert liar.
Yeah,
you know,
a grade A horseshite artist.
Grade A horseshite. Smell a manure off him.
But some people did smell manure off him. So, in 2007, a skeptic by the name of Joe Nickel characterised the story as more likely the result of imagination than of recollection. Oh, Joe. Critics of Ostman note that he did not make the event public until 1957, 33 years after it took place. Primatologist John Napier states that Ostman's story fails to convince me primarily on the grounds of limited food resources available. Bigfoot researcher Peter Byrne cannot accept Ostman's story without more evidence. Now, Peter Byrne, if I'm not mistaken, is one of the sort of main Sasquatch researchers from back in the day.
Yeah.
Sort of devoted a lot of his life to it. So if there was anyone that would believe him, it would be Peter. Like he's one of those, like he devoted his life to it. So, you would think, and I think he has the Sasquatch Museum. I think that was him. Peter Byrne.
Yeah. Well, I mean, maybe he's just like, because effectively it is just a story, and it's a story that's being told 30 years after the event. So, like, I'm glad that the person who's like leading the charge on Bigfoot isn't going, oh yeah, that happened, because it's effectively just a story, right? Like you can't prove it there's no evidence. Like,
on the flip side, like, why 30 years after the event would you come forward and say these dates and say this event happened? Like, when you could literally say it happened last week, or it happened a year ago, or it happened. Why so specific? But then again, I suppose you do have to pick a date.
Well, this is it, yeah. But I mean, like, I don't know much about Osman in terms of, like, was he a con man? Was he this? Was he that?
I've never seen him talk or anything like that.
Exactly.
No.
So it's a tricky one to call. But on the other hand, cross-examination seemed to take place. Again, we don't know the competency of Naismith and Green, who were carrying this out. So hard to know for sure. But look, I mean, it is what it is. It's an interesting story, if nothing else. And look, compared to a lot of the other stories that people tell about Sasquatch, it's not. If any of the Sasquatch stories are true, then that's not out of the realm of possibility, right?
Yeah, this is it. Yeah, so in for a penny, in for a pound. Eamon, there was a sighting in the 50s. What was the crack with that?
So after 1958, woods workers east and west of the Cascade Mountains began to report seeing creatures and discovering their immense tracks along logging roads, enhancing public recognition of the Bigfoot name. So this is where we start to get the name Bigfoot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
So witnesses observed that these so-called humanoids were crossing the roads at night, striding furtively through forest and mountain terrain, or digging for and eating ground squirrels in rock piles. Now, here's one, right? Could it be, all right? You got to remember that the North America, up until very recently compared to Europe, where we're from, because we're all G,
we are from Europe.
That's like North America was a wild landscape, let's say, and it's quite a young nation as well.
Mm-hmm.
So could it have been that as the rail lines are being created, as towns and cities are developing and spreading outward, could they have been encroaching on Bigfoot's sort of stomping
territory?
Grounds?
Yeah. You might be right there. Yeah, the sort of thing to weigh against that is that loggers are notorious shite talkers and have like a really intricate lore that they themselves created. I mean, there's something like 20 something like logger cryptids that were just made by loggers. The jackalope is one of the more famous ones that springs to mind.
He's probably one of the cuter of the cryptids, right?
Yeah, and then there's like something like a hairy fish is another one. There's a load of different sort of logger tales that were used to sort of amuse themselves with. So is it possible that our buddy that got kidnapped, is it possible that he jumped on the bandwagon with all the stories that were beginning to come out in the 50s?
Yeah, and look, anything is possible. Anything is possible. You know me, dude. I want Bigfoot to be real.
Yes.
But I'm also a realist. So while I would say like it seems like there's some interesting evidence or potential for Bigfoot being real, stories like this are a dime a dozen, and I can tell anybody a story about anything. Do you know what I mean? And
well, yeah, you're right. It's an interesting thing, and this is where this episode jumps off, guys. We wanted to bring it to the modern day, which is the 50s. Really, is where just before the Patterson Gimlin stuff came out and all that, and that's the next episode is going to be in-depth deep dive on Patterson Gimlin. We'll put that to bed. We'll go through some of the more sort of comprehensive things that we can talk about. And it'll be all stitched together into one mega episode when it's done. So that's really cool as well. So do you think, Eamon, at this point of our series, that is Bigfoot more likely to be literally what it is, which is a bipedal ape like creature that is existing in America? Do you think it was possibly some wild men that still existed, some populations of maybe perhaps feral wild Native Americans that had branched off in some cannibalistic type of tribe thing?
Maybe, like, even you got to remember with the Hibagon, a lot of people reported seeing this, Bigfoot-esque creature in Japan, and it was actually soldiers from World War II that were still in the jungles thinking that the war was on.
Yeah.
So, geez, all bets are off, man. I think that Bigfoot, I think it may be stranger than we think it is. Like, you could almost make a lot of people make ties between Bigfoot and UFOs, liminal spaces, TM, all that sort of stuff. They're applying that to Bigfoot as well. There's even one story in Skinwalker Ranch about a portal opening and a Bigfoot falling out of the portal onto the ground.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Like, there's a lot of weird stuff, man. And especially, there's some really crazy stuff about, if you've ever heard of the books or documentaries, Missing 411.
Yeah.
Man, there's some stuff in that where, like, people wind up in the root system of trees after going missing. People tying their belts around trees to try and stop aliens taking them. And there's talk again of portals, Bigfoot grabbing people and bringing them into portals. When I asked Gordo recently, I was like, oh, yeah, what do you think about Bigfoot? And he was just like, oh, yeah, well, it's like an interdimensional being, and he takes you, and then he brings you down, and he rapes you, and he eats you, and then he puts you back. And I was like, oh.
Why would he do that, though?
Why do anything? I don't know. Like, again...
Like, isn't the legend of Bigfoot good enough without saying that it's an interdimensional person eater? Like, isn't that... So, like, isn't it stretch enough to try and concede that a Bigfoot exists before let's put him in a spaceship or say that he travels through dimensions?
Well, I suppose what you could say is maybe that's the response to, not being able to find Bigfoot. Is like, well, the reason you can't find him. But also the other thing with a lot of... and, I think we're probably all a little bit conspiratorially minded to a certain extent. But a lot of those... Minorly,
I would say, I am, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I'm a bit more skeptic of I would be more likely to believe in cryptids than conspiracies for whatever reason. And again, not a knock on you if conspiracies are your thing. That's just me. But I think that in a lot of conspiracy circles, they will try to join all of this stuff together.
True.
And maybe join dots where they mightn't necessarily join. The other part is maybe, like, there's a lot of stuff that I've heard, certainly about, have you heard about the white woman?
No, I have not.
This is a weird thing, man. And I don't know too much about it. I've only heard of it recently, but it's about a lot of Bigfoot sightings. This basically, like a woman in white being seen around the time of the Bigfoot being there.
Okay.
And there's some folkloric stuff about a woman with bird's feet who would take children.
It's not Tommy the Pigeon, no. Female.
It's not like Tina the Pigeon.
Right. Tina the Pigeon.
Something like that. But yeah, these are things that are coming out in folklore now, and there's some sightings. A lot of people have reported seeing this white woman and then Sasquatch sort of trailing behind. Again, dude, like, I don't know. I really don't know, but it seems to get more and more, like, the further you go down the rabbit hole of Bigfoot, it gets squirrelier and squirrelier, you know?
Yeah, Bigfoot really has its own, like, universe. It's like a Marvel character.
Yeah.
There's that much lore to him. And a very important question, Eamon, for you. Kill, marry, ride.
Yeah.
Bigfoot, Yeti, or Hibagon.
Okay. I wouldn't kill the Hibagon because he's very, like, kind of cute. Seems like a cute, lovable kind of a cryptid, and especially because that Japanese guy, you know, talked about the Hibagon growing old with his grandchildren and telling them stories of people. So I think
there's female Hibagons as well now, by the way. So just I think your male.
I'm kind of masculinizing it. But the Hibagon as a creature seems more sort of like a companion than Bigfoot.
That ass fat, though.
Huh?
That ass fat.
That's right. He's got thick ass. Or she's got a thick ass.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Do you have to ride one of them, by the way?
Oh, but if you're marrying someone, you're probably likely.
It's kill, marry, or ride. So
God.
you have to. Have you ever played this before?
No, I have. I get it now.
Right.
But I figured that if you marry someone, this is like, you've had. Yeah, I get you. I'm just saying, you gotta like, you know. Well, like it's, you know, like you have to consummate the marriage, right? Anyway, I would, the fat ass on the Hibagon.
That ass take.
Hibagon, like, okay, I'll ride the Hibagon.
Mad for the arse, are you?
Well, like,
baby got back.
I think there's be hair all over the boobs, so you just need to do one. And Bigfoot and Yeti both have hairy arses, so look, you
don't want the hairy arse.
I like big butts, and I'm getting that laugh. Yeah. Bigfoot and Yeti, this is a tough one. I will kill Bigfoot, marry the Yeti, and then when I bring I'll have Bigfoot's body then, because I've killed him, so I'll become famous and it'll be a really good story because I will have killed Bigfoot, cousin to the Yeti, and that'll cause problems in that relationship. But then I'll probably get quite famous for having the first validated Bigfoot body. And then that might be actually how I wind up nailing the Hibagon and ruining my marriage, because the Hibagon's sort of like, oh, you're that like Indiana Jones type guy who's like, oh, going off and finding Bigfoot and everything. And maybe Hibagon didn't like Bigfoot. She thought he stole her limelight. And then, obviously just getting into a lot of marital troubles then with my marriage with the Yetina, which again, it's probably not a good idea if you have like a 7'2" wife who's able to brave the snows. Probably wouldn't cheat on her and piss her off. I'd say she'd give me a fair hiding. I think I would probably kill Yeti. Okay. For that reason, because I think the Yeti strikes me as way more aggressive than the other two for some reason or another. I don't know why exactly. I think you're right.
The abominable snowman. I mean, you know, he's a spooky dude.
Remember, it was a mistranslation.
Oh yes, of course. Well, I still think he's still abominable in my eyes.
Okay.
So he's getting killed. He's getting got. I suppose I'd marry Bigfoot and eat sweet grass and chill out with the family. Sounds like a fun time, really. Nice way to settle down. I could probably enjoy it. And they might have his sleeping bag still there, so I could chill out with that. It'd be quite comfy. And Hibagon's got a mad ass. It's the Nicki Minaj of bipedal apes.
Cardi B of bipedal apes.
Yeah. It's like a Cardi B. I suppose I would have to get all up in Hibagon. But I think, is there anything more that you want to add to the Sasquatch?
Since we're talking about having to kill, marry, or sleep with one of these, there was a story that I heard, and this is too legit to quit, on the Sasquatch Chronicles podcast, where a guy rang up and his story was about an old woman who was taking care of a baby Sasquatch and a 7-year-old Sasquatch as well, but she wasn't 7-year-old in like the way a 7-year-old human is. She was like the way, I guess, like a dog would age in 7 years. Like she was, right. I don't know. The way he described it, he goes, I gotta tell you, I kept looking at the girl who was covered in the blonde hair, because I mean, she looked like she was like 25 maybe. She had big old titties, and she kind of growled at me because I didn't mean to. I didn't know where to look, but I was attracted to her. I would like to see her again, to be honest. But that was like the story what went on like that. It was
it's yikes by the sounds of it.
It's yikes, but look, if that man is listening to the podcast, do write into us at monsterfrodpodcast@gmail.com and just let us know, are you seeing each other? Did you match on Bumble? How is the relationship going? Is there any language difficulties? Bits and pieces.
Do fill us in, and I hope you enjoy, guys. This is the first of our juicy series, and like I said, there will be an ad-free mega episode seamlessly transitioning into the next episode. And that will be coming once we wrap up Bigfoot. When that is, we don't actually know yet, because these aren't going to be sequential. Actually, I should say that as well. This will be over the course of probably half a year, I'd say, by the time we get through all the different bits.
I think as well, Bigfoot is the present that's never fully wrapped. I don't think you can wrap this thing up.
Yeah, you're dead right, Evan. That's well said. Do you have anything that you would like to add before we close this one off?
All I would like to add is that I have nothing to declare except my genius. No, not that. I'm quite a silly Billy. Yes. But I would like to just, again, echo what you said earlier in the podcast. Major thanks to everyone that's listening, everyone that's subscribed to the Patreon, everyone that's reviewing, everyone that's liking the Instagram pictures, any of that stuff, man. Really appreciate it. Thanks so much. We're getting good feedback, and we really enjoy doing this, and we really get a kick out of the fact that you enjoy listening to us two morons talking about this stuff. So that's awesome. Just with the Patreon as well, I think I made a commitment in a separate episode that we would record a song when we hit 20.
That'll be done.
So
that'll be done.
Yeah, so I'm we're gonna get that done for you.
That'll already be done by the time this episode comes.
Oh, that's done. I gotcha.
Yeah.
So if we're getting near 40 by the time this comes out, every 20 we'll get a new song. We'll make a whole album out of it. So yeah, we have worked on that and hope that the patrons enjoyed it.
It's the time thing is weird. Yeah, because we record one current every week and then one sort of to be on the pile, I suppose you could say. But Eamon said it all perfectly, guys. I hope you've enjoyed this episode. I've been Rob.
I've been Eamon.
Over and out.
Namaste.